Tucked away down a little snickle way in York is the city's oldest licensed public house, the Ye Olde Starre Inne. With a history of the building dating back to the 1600s, during an incredibly turbulent time in the country's history, it's no surprise that this pub has picked up a spectre or two along the way. But if you're fancying a pint at the dog-friendly Old Starre, make sure you've got a good hold of that lead, because man's best friend might try and protect you from something you can't even see. We're back in one of my favourite cities this week, York. It is just so haunted. I love it. And so not too long ago we covered the Golden Fleece, which is widely thought of as the most haunted pub in York. But today we're talking about the Ye Olde Starre Inne on Stonegate, which is right in the centre. And a bit of trivia for you, Guy Fawkes was thought to have been born on one of the houses on Stonegate. So there you go, more you know. But the pub is known as, officially, according to historical records, the longest running continuously licensed public house in York. Because we've got records of its licence dating back to 1644, which is the earliest of any pub in the city. And the name, the Ye Olde Starre Inne, there are a few potential theories as to where this name came from. Some say that for some reason it was a hint at the landlord William Foster's royalist leanings, showing his support for the quote-unquote Old Star, King Charles I, because opening with this licence in 1644, that's slap bang in the middle of the English Civil War, where the government is going to war against the monarchy. But then other theories suggest that it was a reference to the Star of Bethlehem, as the pub is very close to York Minster, and I mean very close, like you can see York Minster from the courtyard. And so while this inn, in this kind of form, has been going since 1644, it's thought that parts of the building are much older, with some historians believing that the cellar could even be as old as the 10th century. And I mean, that's really not beyond the realms of imagination at all. York is a very old city as it is. Even the street, Stonegate, roughly follows the path of a main Roman road when they'd built their city called Eboracum here. And so this area has been quite densely populated for literal millennia. And so then, over the centuries, when the Roman Empire fell, and then the Vikings took over, and then the medieval English, and the road became the one that we recognise today as Stonegate. And it wouldn't be uncommon for people to knock down and rebuild buildings using the foundations of what was previously there. And so if the cellar dates all the way back to the 10th century, it's entirely possible that at some point between then and 1644, the building was already being used as an inn, but we will just never know. But this cellar, it served a very important, very grisly purpose during the violent time of the English Civil War. Because in 1644, the same year that the Old Star gained its licence, there was a battle not too far away called the Battle of Marston Moor, in which the Royalists would suffer a crushing defeat. What was left of the Royalist army fled the battlefield, and their commander, Prince Rupert, perhaps knowing that the Old Star's landlord was a Royalist sympathiser, he apparently brought his men to the inn that night, the 2nd of July 1644. Prince Rupert then, allegedly, paid the landlord, William Foster, to care for the wounded men that were left there, while he rode on to go tell King Charles I about their loss. And I'm having to say allegedly and apparently a lot again, as I couldn't find any actual documentation of this involvement with the pub, but from what I could see, it's the story that has been passed down. But if you know for sure, or you know where I can find out, then please do let me know in the comments. And so apparently, again, the pub went further than just caring for a couple of soldiers after the battle and sending them on their way. It was actually used as a kind of makeshift temporary hospital for the Royalist forces. And here's where the cellar came in very handy, because a part of it was sectioned off to be used as an operating room, where doctors of the time would dig bullets out of wounds and amputate limbs if they were going a bit gangrenous. And these doctors, they were doing the best that they could with the knowledge and tools that they had. They weren't these butchers who didn't have any clue what they were doing. But the problem was, they didn't have anaesthetic, so the sounds coming out of that little room underneath the Old Star would have been horrific. The screams and cries would have just been brutal. After the Civil War, the Old Star went back to being an inn, and at that time, it looked a little different from what you'll see here today. Because York was, and still is, a busy place, there would have been loads of travellers into the city. And all of these travellers at that time, mid to late 1600s, early 1700s, would have had horses that needed stabling. And so originally the inn was actually open to Stonegate, like you could see the building from the road, and it was set back, so you'd have to walk across a little courtyard bit to go to the building for your pint. And this courtyard, it had loads of stabling with spaces for all the coach horses and the coaches of the people who were staying at the inn. There was also a well in the courtyard, which was actually the only supply supply of fresh water in the area at that time. And it also had fresh horses too, because it operated as what was known as a posting house, so somewhere where you could go and swap out your tired out horses for fresh ones to carry on with the journey wherever you were going. But this stable yard at the time, it stretched from Stonegate, obviously had the pub building in the middle, and then stretched all the way back to the street that's now known as Duncombe Place, but used to be called Little Blake Street, and before that Lop Lane. And this stable yard was so convenient that it was quite often used as a stopping place for circus and theatrical parties for the Theatre Royal, making the pub probably the favoured watering hole of the actors in the area. It was a good place to be seen. In the 1730s though, York's population was growing and they needed to maximise the space that they had. And so they actually built buildings across the front of Stonegate, meaning that there was only a little passageway leading to the Old Star. Obviously this didn't exactly do wonders for passing trade, so the landlord of the time, a Thomas Bulmer, he decided to put up a sign that stretched across the street and paid 5 shillings per year to each of the buildings on either side, a saddler's and a shoemaker's where the sign was attached. And it's still there today. You also now can't access the Ye Olde Starre Inne from Duncombe Place either. That was prime real estate too. The Duncombe Place Masonic Lodge was built in 1863 to the back of the pub. And so now, if you don't know what you're looking for, it feels like a proper little tucked away spot. But if you're into the paranormal, then you're going to want to make the trip. Because of course, a pub as old as this one, and with the stories of wounded civil soldiers going through what was quite possibly the most traumatic event in their lives. And let's face it, if it is all true, probably more than a few soldiers likely died here. The Ye Olde Starre Inne is now allegedly haunted. The first entity who makes absolute total sense why he's been seen here is that of a royalist officer. Apparently he's been seen as a full-bodied, solid apparition, looking just like he's come straight out of a reenactment. He's wearing the hat, the doublet and breeches that would have been the sort of uniform of the time for a cavalier. People who have witnessed him say that he's wounded, but he still has that air of authority. He's still in charge of his men and so stands in quite a commanding pose. I don't know whereabouts this entity has been seen, but there are more reports of paranormal activity that appear to be connected to the English Civil War. And of course, it's down in the cellar. So obviously, a pretty creepy place to find yourself anyway, but that might have more to do with the fact that it is down underground, potentially made worse if you know about the story of what it was used for during the Civil War. But it's reported that in the early hours of the morning, when absolutely no one is around, and certainly no one is down there, the echoes of groans and screams of pain from royalist soldiers can be heard coming from the cellar, which that's got to be doubly creepy. Like, you're locking up for the night, all the patrons have gone home, and you hear a blood-curdling scream as if someone's having their leg amputated without anaesthetic. That would be terrifying, let's be honest. On the staircase, there is apparently another entity, and we don't think she's anything to do with the English Civil War, but in reality, we actually don't know anything about her. She's just described as an elderly lady dressed in black, and she's seen slowly climbing up the stairs. She only appears to young children though, so that's all the information we have on her. I mean, if kids don't say the creepiest things sometimes anyway, then they go asking mummy, who is that woman in black walking up the stairs? And then you look over and there's nothing there. Like, no thank you, little Timmy. No thank you. One potentially paranormal report I can get behind though is the story of 2 black cats. Apparently, the completely solid figures of 2 black cats have been seen playing and running around being all cute around the ground floor bar area. And visitors to the pub, they'll see these cats and think, neat, pub cats, which would be my first reaction. Like, I would not be mad about that at all. Bring my cider over to me, I'll be on the floor trying to win their affection. But the staff and regulars already know that when you reach out and stroke them, you'll feel nothing but cold air. And the story behind these absolutely adorable entities is that when the building that sits here now was being built in the 1600s, 2 cats were bricked up alive within the walls of the bar area. And obviously nowadays, that just sounds horrendous. Like, why would anyone do that? But back then, it really wasn't that unusual. It was a well-known practice, something you did when you built a new building to protect it against bad luck and fire. And so now some people believe that, while yes, sometimes these cats will appear as solid flesh and blood apparitions, other times they're the entities responsible for really affecting dogs in the bar area. Like, hackles up, snarling, these dogs are seeing something that we can't see. So naturally, people make the connection that they must just be more sensitive to these feline apparitions. But other people believe that these dogs are being affected by something else, some other entity that has never been seen by a human and is referred to only as the thing. And whatever it is, it apparently has a tendency to really set dogs off in the bar area relatively regularly. Sometimes your dog will be sleeping soundly at your feet while you're enjoying your pint, when suddenly they'll wake up, bolt upright, and be staring at something in the corner of the room. And then sometimes you'll see them following something across the room as it slowly makes its way around the bar, but you can't see anything there at all. Sometimes they'll just snarl and growl at this invisible entity, but one time in the 1980s, there was apparently a dog who got so worked up by whatever this thing was that it launched forward to attack whatever it is. Teeth out, hackles up, everything. This dog was trying to do some damage, but obviously Obviously, it sailed straight past whatever it saw and collided headfirst with the wall. Apparently, the poor thing knocked himself out on the wall, bless him. He was probably so confused about what just happened. I hope he was okay. Maybe we need to take our dogs to the Old Star. They'll probably try and make friends with it. They make friends with everyone. We'll keep a good hold of the lead just in case. In this bar area, customers have also reported seeing their glass move across the table. Even though the table is dry, it's level, there is no explanation as to why it is moving. Staff members have experienced lights being turned off and on, and chairs moving by themselves. I also came across a story about a couple from World War I, and it was that they were a young couple and the guy was due to be shipped out to the trenches to go and fight in the World War. He wrote a letter to his special girl promising that the first night he came home he would meet her at the Old Star. So she would go to the inn, waiting for her love to come home night after night, but he never did. And so now, allegedly, both the figures of this man and woman wearing World War I era clothing have been seen in the pub, seemingly trapped forever searching for one another. But that story I do take with a pinch of salt. I only saw it on the Green King website, which is the big chain that owns the Ye Olde Starre Inne now. Plus, those were the only details provided for the story. There are no names of witnesses who have seen this phenomenon. So yeah, pretty generous pinch of salt. Unless you've heard of this story before, you've got more to add to it, or you yourself have seen one of these figures, let me know. Because while the Ye Olde Starre Inne promises a cozy vibe, good beer and hearty food, you might also get more company than you were expecting. So if you see a woman in a black dress, a soldier with a mortal wound, or maybe your hound's a little bit on edge, you might be in the presence of a long dead patron who never got a chance to settle their tab. What do you think? Tell me all of the things. Is it haunted in your opinion? I'm inclined to think that yes, it's likely to have at least some sort of residual haunting going on there. If the cellars really were used as a makeshift hospital / operating room, there is going to be some energetic trauma happening in that room. Even if it's not from the current building itself, if the cellars are as old as the 10th century, what did the building that stood on the site before the Old Star operate as? It could be anything from that part of its history too. And not forgetting the detail that there used to be a well in the courtyard, running water, the thought that that amplifies spiritual energy if you believe that theory. But it would be amazing if more stories came forward, more people who have experienced weird things there, staff or visitors. But either way, I really do love covering an old pub. They do tend to be shorter stories, but they're still just so fascinating to me. There's nothing better than when you're a couple of pints deep and you find out that the pub you're drinking in is actually haunted. And so then out come all the ghost stories. I love it. And I hope you do too, as I've sprinkled in quite a few more haunted pubs over the next couple of months. One, because I love doing them, but two, because they're a little bit shorter, they're helping me towards something very special coming a little bit later on in the year. Honestly, I'm so excited to share it with you. I think you're gonna love it. I hope you're gonna love it. I'm doing it now. What are you gonna do? Shoot me? I'm like a whippet. But if you enjoyed this video, please leave it a like, and if you're not already, maybe you'd like to subscribe too, only if you fancy it, though it really does help me out and I really do appreciate it. But anyway, that is all from me today. I cannot wait to chat with you more about the morbid, mysterious and macabre. So until next time, sleep safe. We have an actual demonstration for one of the ghosts today. Are you gonna help me tell this story, or are you just gonna be a bit of a pain in the ass? Because it's 30 minutes till dinner time.